Okay, well, we can start. I think everybody's here. Uh, if you could mute yourselves, or I'll mute everybody here, but let me do that. Participants, mute all. Yes, done. But feel free to unmute anything, anytime for any reason, and jump in and share. So we are on page 68 of Sri Sarada Devi and her divine play. And we're on the paragraph down that says during the first visit. And so, yeah, we just finished talking a lot about the puja, the worship, the ritual worship that Ramakrishna did, worshiping the Divine Mother as the Divine Mother, and how both of them went into a deep samadhi and experienced a oneness in that process. Lost their identities completely and just became the pure I, the pure Atman, and had that unified experience. So they both ceased to be separate and apart, and that which is common to all of us, they became, or they experienced. Their eyes were open to that, and which is a wonderful meditation, because you and I will eventually have that same experience. Imagine that intimacy with your ideal. A wonderful thing. All right, so starting on page 68. During this first visit, we're talking about Holy Mother's visit to Dakshineshwar. Holy Mother stayed at Dakshineshwar from March 1872 to October 1873, so over a year, about a year and a half. At that time, the Master considered himself to be a maid, or a female confidant of the Divine Mother. All right. I love Thakur for this reason. You just never know what's coming. So his new wife has come to see him for a year and a half, and he decided that time he's now a gopi, a milkmaid of Krishna. And so he's going through his worship of God as a handmaid, which is fascinating, just a fascinating ideal. How dedicated. If you read in the Great Master, you get a lot of details about these different sadhanas that he went through. And the thing I always take away from it is that if he thought something would bring him closer to God, or something would give him insight or learning, he not only did it, but he did it with no reservations or holds barred at all. He completely dove into it, so much that it actually would manifest in his physical body, which is a phenomenal thing, because we read about this in the spiritual biology of the Vedanta, that the body is a step down from mind, and that it's actually mind that creates the body, and that it's based on all of our karmas and samskaras and whatnot. And that the mind, if the mind can be focused enough, if the mind is clear enough and single focused enough, it can actually physically change the body. And so during his female sadhana, his body became female-like in many ways. And in his sadhana as Hanuman, he actually grew a little monkey tail, which I remember I loved reading that for the first time, because I read it again. I was like, what? What is going on here? It just opens up the amazement of this world. It's kind of like that first time I read or heard that story from Jesus, where he said you could throw a mountain in the ocean just by having faith the size of a mustard seed. And I didn't know what the size of a mustard seed was until I joined Vedanta. Never saw a mustard seed until I moved into a Vedanta monastery. So this outlook on the world, quite interesting when we think about these experiences of these divine souls, that this world is not rigid and fixed and static, like it seems, that the material seems and looks like it's going to last forever. But everything is in constant change, constant flux, and is 100% dynamic, which means that if we can break out of our ignorance, that the world changes. And it's why, Gandhi told us, be the change that you want to see in the world, because your world exists within you, the entirety of it. And when you change, it will change. And you're welcome to do experiments on that and find that to be true. I want to be there if you throw a mountain in the water, though, in the ocean. So if you're going to do that, let me know. All right. The master considered himself to be a maid or a female confidant of the Divine Mother. Holy Mother helped him to dress accordingly and also cooked for him. I bet they had a lot of fun with that. Some women from Dakshineshwar who used to visit the Kali temple became close to Holy Mother. Prompted by these women, one day Holy Mother said to the master, "Well, if there is no child, how will the family continue?" The master replied, "What good is there in having just one son? In the near future, you will have so many sons and daughters that you will be exhausted looking after them." So isn't that wonderful? Just that intimacy between them. And even though being the Divine Mother, we see that she had a sadhana of taking care of some of her family members in order to keep her mind bound to the world, so that she wouldn't, go into samadhi and go back to her isness. That she stayed here and is committed to us in that sense. That we are her family. This is what Thakur is talking about. He's not talking about a third party experience different from us. We are the fulfillment of this sentence. You and me are the fulfillment of this sentence, that we are Holy Mother's children. And I'm sure that every single one of us is doing our very best to make sure that Mother is exhausted after looking after us. So just know that she's expecting that. So it's quite all right for you to be an exhausting child. Just be one that screams for your mother and wants that attention. Holy Mother recalled, the master didn't talk about anything other than God. That's the whole sentence. The master didn't talk about anything other than God, which is not a limiting factor, actually, because if we live in the presence, everything that happens in our moment is related to God. And so once we get that little bit of work done, where we're living in the constant presence of the beloved, we also will talk only of God, because everything will have something to do with God. It's right now we're kind of in the state where everything we talk about has something to do with us. With the ego self, we're in the middle of everything. So we're always talking about ourselves. And when we make that shift out of ego space into our unchanging absolute within, that beautiful space of Sat Chetanananda, when we establish there's no longer a lower self or a smaller self that we're interested in relating everything in the universe to. It's now all in the divine. And so our words also will become about God all the time. As we lose this ignorance, as we lose our smallness, as we lose our belief in material as being primary. The master didn't talk about anything other than God. He told me, look, this body exists one moment and dies the next. People undergo so much suffering and pain in this world. Why would this body beget more children? God is eternal reality. It is better to call on him. As soon as you assume a body, you have endless troubles. So keeping that vision on that, it's good to be in a constant realization that things are temporary. everything is temporary around us. Nothing will last. There's all kinds of ways of doing that. It's like anytime you think of ruins or go see ruins or abandoned buildings, to stop and ponder what that used to be. Jesus was walking with some of his disciples, and they were marveling at these grand Roman buildings and the beautiful structures. And Jesus stops them and he says, "Truly, I tell you, you see all of this beautiful grandeur." And Peter was like, "Yes, yes, Master, we see it." He says, "Truly, I tell you, a time is coming where not one stone will remain piled upon another." And to have that knowledge of this world that we live in will help us to renounce properly and to keep things in perspective. That none of these pleasures are going to stick with us. None of our enjoyments. And so it's always very healthy. Like when you are enjoying a good meal in a restaurant, pay attention to how temporary that is. One of my one of my best examples and most deeply felt examples is when I drink eggnog, because that flavor in eggnog is one of my most favorite flavors in the world. Just the eggnog out of the carton from the grocery store. I love that flavor, and it is for some reason the only flavor that reminds me that my tongue is only like an inch and a half long, because it seems like I'm just able to appreciate the flavor, and it's done, it's gone. It's like it's so poignant to me that you can't build your happiness in this world, because all of it, just like we read in the Philokalia, heaven is dosed, which means heaven is broken out, just given, metered out to you in little tiny tastes, so that everything everything that we experience is just a it's mother giving you a corner of the cookie, just a taste, just enough to tease you. And so that's the problem with the world. And this is what we keep in the front of our mind by remembering this temporary nature of it, that nothing here, nothing is going to fulfill you. And if you did get to the point where you could keep every second of your day filled with pleasure, you would become so exhausted and so worn out from that effort that it wouldn't be worth it to you. And so keep these little things in mind. That here Thakur with his very own wife, is sharing this thought. It's like our marriage isn't going to be forever. Your body, my body, this husband wife relationship, it's gone in a breath. Why should we build a family on that? Why should we focus on that? God is the one thing. God is the eternal reality, he says. It is better to call on him. As soon as you assume a body, you have endless trouble. Right?
Can I say, so it is, the more one becomes aware, for me, because the joy is not there, it brings a lot of sadness. Because everything you see is not going to be there, and you become aware of it, right? Everything, whether it is the children, whether it is and you think, oh, this body is going to go, this is going to go, this is, and especially at my age, everything that, you're not looking towards bigger and better things, and materialistically. But yet, one hasn't gotten to the point where one is in the joyful state. You haven't tasted the bliss yet. So there's this underlying feeling of sadness. What do you do with that?
Enjoy it. Enjoy it. Be amazed that you can feel sadness. No, that's one perspective, one possibility. I'm not kidding with that. That's actually a true thing. Everything is a wonder and an indication of something beautiful. So it is true that what we see and what we think is what is temporary. All of the things that are our favorite things about being here are our favorite things because they are a link to that which is not temporary.
Right.
uh, and so it is at the same time that we're practicing seeing the temporary nature of all material in the world, everything separate from us in the world, seemingly separate. At the same time, we're also reminding ourselves that that beauty that we see there is inherent to us and is not temporary. It is forever, and it's not going to be microdosed to us.
Yeah, I guess
In
that conviction is not that strong yet, and therefore not
Yes,
the.
yes, that's exactly right. It's not. And Brother Lawrence, not Brother Lawrence, Saint John of the Cross writes a very powerful poem about that, about the dark night of the soul. That this dark night of the soul is when you are starting to understand the unreality of this world and its inability to satisfy you or to keep you happy, and yet have not yet found that shrine within that sings of a constant sound of bliss for us. That tweener state is very difficult, and it is hard to navigate. But it's through faith and grace and prayer that we find our refuge. We use that difficulty to push us into the arms of the divine, as it were, to push us into the divine art, the mother's divine lap. And so we hold on to that, but all the while remembering. But when you're enjoying something, do equally understand that it's temporary in the form that it's in, but understand that it is a metered experience of your divine nature. And so if you're sitting there tasting that cookie and it's like, man, that is so good, or that eggnog, or that, what was that pumpkin spice latte, that we can know that the only reason we like that is because it has resonated, or what do you call that when you pluck one guitar string, all the other strings uh, resonate with that single string. That's what beauty is for us. It's somebody plucks the string in the senses, but all of the other, the real within us, that vibration as such coming from that real is what announces the beauty to us. That's what we actually enjoy. We don't enjoy the object. Right, when you feel something beautiful, there's nothing coming from outside.
Right.
That is the pleasurable thing. That pleasurable thing is coming from within you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because something externally has reminded you of the divine nature within. And that's what beauty is. That's what joy is. That's what love is. That's all of these things. They belong to you, but they only sing because of our attachment to mind, because we've moved out of the heart space. We're not experiencing them in their even keel, unchanging constant. We experience them metered out by thought. So we just get these little indications. And so this turn within, O mind, is what is healthy renunciation. It's turning within, meaning it's turning on our backs on this imagined external. But at the same time, we're turning toward the infinitely beautiful. We're turning toward the infinitely fulfilling, the infinitely deep, the infinitely nurturing, the infinite safety. All of these wonderful things is what we're turning toward. So when Thakur is telling us dive deep, yes, we're leaving the waves of the mind on the surface. We're going under those. And yes, we're going deep, but what we're going deep into is our own nature, our own self. And the pearls and precious gems that we find are that part of us that have resonated any time that something in the material world has reminded us of this divine self. And so to practice knowing that, not to practice pretending that, but to practice knowing that. And so what you do is you look at the thing that you're deriving pleasure from, whatever it is. And part of your discernment is to find what is the divine nature that is vibrating in harmony with that? What aspect of it is awakening my inner knowledge, or for the experience to happen, for me to experience beauty, or to experience love, or to experience security, all of these things. And so, it's just like Thakur was temporary. He and Sharada in that form are dead and gone, bodies burned and scattered. And yet, look, we still fall in love with them. How is that possible if that love did not exist within us? We still commune with them. And how would that be possible if they were the source of those things? It's like all love that you have for all of your family, for all of your friends, it doesn't come from them. It's within you. And it's what they are. It's what they really are. It's who they really are. Because they don't exist outside of you. Nothing, right? We talk about that. Everything is a thought. So your friends, your family, your intimate partners exist within you. And they will never leave you in that space. That in that space, that love, that resonant love, will always be there. And that's why you loved them. That's why you enjoyed them. That's why you were intimate with them. And when their bodies are gone, if you stay attached to the body, we've talked about this, there's sadness, continual sadness. So it's our attachments that cause our sadness when we think about impermanence, when we think about change. But it's our detachment that allows us to see with clarity that these things don't exist outside, that it's just a song inside, and that to know that we are the source of that. Then you always have the company of your loved ones, regardless of where their bodies are. You always have their company, because they are that love you feel inside is who they are, is what they are. A year after the Shodashi Puja, Holy Mother developed stomach problems. Shambhu Malik, a devotee of the master, brought Dr. Prasad to treat her, but it did not help. As she did not want the master to be worried about her, she left for Karmarpakor and Jairambati in October 1873. There, she slowly recovered with the change of diet and climate. Yeah, there's a lot of ways to feel about that, but it's beautiful that she didn't want to bother Thakur. And, in the same way that Thakur didn't want to bother her when he was in Samadhi at night, sent her to sleep in the other room so that she'd be able to sleep. She wouldn't sit there and be worried. So you see how they're watching over each other and doing it is a wonderful example of a healthy marriage, where she could have been very self-centered and expected her husband to wait on her and to take care of her and to do all that. And Thakur would have happily done that. There's no doubt. But her concern first was not about her sickness and her health and whatnot. She was still, focused on the other. And I think we're going to see that quite a bit if we pay attention to their marriage. That's the example of a healthy marriage, of a good marriage, where each partner is putting the needs and desires and loves of the other partner before their own. And as long as that goes on in synchronicity, you have a happy marriage. If one of them stops, you're going to have resentment and fighting. So do your best, in your relationships, to keep your mind on the well-being of the other, and hopefully that will inspire the same response. If it doesn't, then Mother takes care of it. She steps in and becomes that response within you, because you'll feel the beauty of that life, because that's what your nature is, and that will definitely strum those harmonious strings of the self when you do selfless service. But incidentally, there's something Vivekananda says. He says, if you are able to produce a single, completely selfless action, selfless, not selfish. If you're able to produce a single, perfectly executed, selfless action in this life, even just one, he said, you will have your realization. And so, what a wonderful thing. Go about your day and try and do. Now, see, that's a catch 22, though, you see, because if you go out and do service because you want to have your realization by doing a perfect selfless act, it's become a non selfless act all of a sudden. So, you see why it's so difficult. If we can just lose this sense of egoism, that's the real trick. So, it's very difficult. So, we're just minimizing it, getting it as close to zero as we can. Holy Mother in Karmarpur and Jairambati, human life never goes smoothly. All right, there you have it. Human life never goes smoothly. I'm going to remember this, and anytime anybody complains to me, I'll be like, what, the master told you? Human life never goes smoothly. Undoubtedly, poverty is painful, but it has a positive side. It helps the inner power of the soul to manifest. It turns the mind so that it surrenders to God. It teaches one how to fight through ordeals, and it helps one recognize a true friend. Now, this is a beautiful little sentence here that would be worthy of highlighting and remembering when things get tough and you can't see the light side of it. Read through this and understand how to turn a difficult situation into a positive experience, into a positive learning. You know, so see if you know, if it can make the soul, the inner soul manifest, the inner light, the inner love, the inner contentment. It turns the mind to surrender to God. Can you let go of your suffering? Can you let go of your irritation, your whatever the difficulty is? Can you let go of it and turn to the beloved, to sit in the light of the presence? You know, does it teach you how to fight through ordeals, you know, to keep fighting, to be tenacious in your desire to manifest your nature, and helps one recognize a true friend, indeed. Like other people in the world, Holy Mother faced disease, bereavement, and poverty. In December of 1873, while she was in Karmarpur, her brother-in-law Rameshwar died. She then moved to Jairambati, where her father died a few months later. And on the 26th of March, 1874, as a result, her mother suffered dire poverty. With her husband's death, the income from his priestly duties came to an end. Her children were young, and there was no one to look after the farm. Fortunately, Shyama Sundari was strong and steadfast, and she took up work husking paddy for the family of a well-to-do neighbor. She received 1/4 of the rice that she husked in exchange for her labor. Holy Mother began to help her mother by working the husking machine. Even with Holy Mother's help, Shyama Sundari could not manage the household and also raise her young children on such a small income. So she sent her sons to different relatives to be educated. Holy Mother did not want to burden her mother, so she decided to return to Dakshineshwar. Yeah, that's a tough life right there. That's a very different life from what many of us have, but some are suffering like this. But you see how it's steadfastness that's important in a situation like that. It's remaining solution oriented, not being beaten by the challenges. Understand, there's a scripture in the Christian scriptures that says, God will never tempt you beyond your ability to endure. You know, so that there is no problem that you can't manage. So there to have that mindset is one of the most beautiful aspects of being a spiritual seeker, is to realize that there is always a vantage point somewhere in your mind that is beautiful. That is beautiful. Nothing else needs to be said. There exists in you always a place, an existence, an isness that is eternally beautiful. And that all of the sufferings of life, if we manage them well, are helps to putting our eye on that fact until we never take our eye off of that fact. And we live in that sustenance of the divine self only. During Ramakrishna's lifetime, Holy Mother traveled between Jairambati Karmarpur area and the Dakshineshwar 9 times. The distance between the Jairambati Kamarpukur area and the Dakshineshwar is 60 miles via the Telobelo Road. Holy Mother would walk 52 miles, cross 4 rivers by ferry, and finally take a boat across the Ganga from Baidyapati to Dakshineshwar. She had no shoes and wore only a sari. She walked through the sun and the rain without an umbrella, ignoring her discomfort. On her long journeys, she would carry a cloth bundle either on her head or held across her waist under her right arm. The bundle contained all of her belongings: a couple of saris, her jewelry, a thin towel, a cloth bag filled with puffed rice, a few chunks of hard molasses, some bananas or other fruit. She would tie a few coins into one of the upper corners of her sari to pay the ferryman. Holy Mother was extremely intelligent and practical. When she traveled, she hid her jewelry inside the puffed rice to protect it from robbers. Holy Mother always traveled in a group to protect herself from highwaymen. When she and her companions were tired, they rested along the side of the road under a tree. They bathed in their saris in a pond or a lake near the road, and then let their clothes dry on their bodies. They passed their nights on rope cots or straw beds in roadside inns that provided a resting place for pilgrims or passerbys. The owners of inns often ran grocery shops. The travelers who could not afford to buy a meal could buy rice and dal to cook their own meal. This is worth thinking about for a moment. Part of it, in my experience in being in India, when I read a roadside inn, I always see like a medieval pub with, the whole night, and everybody has their own room, and there's a nice bed in every room with blankets and everything. Roadside inns, if I take from my own experience, when I did that hike from Gangotri up to Gamuk, uh, there were inns which were basically two big sticks pounded into the ground with a tent cloth stretched across them in a lean-to fashion down to the ground. And on the floor inside of that half a tent was just tons of animal skins and pillows and whatnot. And complete strangers would just climb in there amongst everybody else and find room for themselves and sleep squashed next to a complete stranger. But the beautiful thing is that it's a pilgrimage route, so everybody there is spiritually oriented and there for a spiritual experience of this pilgrimage together. And so it's a very intimate and not at all luxurious reality. So these lean-to inns, and even the more established places were temporary because they had to be taken down every winter. They couldn't do the winter up there. But it was always just these, rough-hewn benches and these rough-hewn tables, if there were benches and tables. Sometimes it was just a mat on the floor that you would sit at, and you could order some chai or an omelet, which is just scrambled eggs, really, but or whatnot like that. But that, it's when they're describing what Mother is doing, don't in any way think that any of it was comfortable or any of it was had all of the accoutrements of a Motel 6. that this was this was wild country back then, even more wild than it is now. It probably took Holy Mother 3 or 4 days to reach Dakshineshwar from Jairambati or Kamarpukur. She arrived in Dakshineshwar in April 1874 for her second visit. She again took up residence in the Nahabat and began serving the master and his mother. Shambhu Malik was a wealthy devotee of the master who had a garden house near the Dakshineshwar temple. When he saw the mother's tiny living quarters in the Nahabat, he decided to build a cottage for her. Swami Charadananda described the situation. It was probably in 1874 that Holy Mother came to Dakshineshwar for the second time. She lived with the master's mother in the Nahabat as before. Shambhu felt that the tiny room was inconvenient for Holy Mother to live in, so he acquired on lease a piece of land near the Dakshineshwar temple for 250 rupees. Wow, that's a big amount of money back then. And decided to build a spacious thatched cottage for her there. Captain Vishwanath Upadhyaya, an officer of the Nepalese government, was then visiting the master and became devoted to him. When Vishwanath heard about Shambhu's building project, he promised to supply all the timber needed. As the sawwood business of the Nepal government was under his control, it was not expensive for him to secure the timber. When the construction started, Vishwanath sent 3 big logs of sawwood from the warehouse located in Belur village across the Ganges. But that night, a strong high tide carried away one of the logs. Believing it to be a bad omen, Hriday was annoyed and remarked that Holy Mother was unlucky. When the captain heard this, he sent another log, and the cottage was completed. Holy Mother lived there for nearly a year. A woman was then appointed to be with her and to help her with the household work. This is very comforting because many of us have talked about how unfair and how difficult it was for the Holy Mother to be living in the Nahabat, which is this tiny space that, she ruined her legs living in there because she could never really stretch out. And she often had several women staying in there with her. So it is beautiful to see that somebody cared, somebody shared your concern, and somebody built her a house to stay in. And she stayed there for a little over a year. Every day, Holy Mother cooked various dishes for the master in that cottage, carried them to the Dakshineshwar temple, and returned to her cottage after he had finished his meal. Sometimes during the day, the master would visit the cottage to look after her and make sure that she was happy. That's beautiful. So he was checking on her. This is a side that I haven't often read in the gospel. It's quite reassuring. It's heartwarming, actually. To make sure that she was happy, he would stay with her for a while, and then he would return to the temple. There was only one exception to this routine. One afternoon, as soon as the master arrived at Holy Mother's cottage, a heavy rain started falling. It continued until midnight, making it impossible for him to return to the temple. He was compelled to stay there overnight, and Holy Mother cooked rice and soup to serve him. There's a footnote. It says, the master humorously said to the mother, "This is as if I had come home like any priest of the Kali temple going home at night." So he experienced a typical coming home to the family house exactly one night in his life. After living in that cottage for a year, and there's a double star here that says Swami Sharadananda mentioned that Shambhu Malik built the cottage for Holy Mother probably in 1874. But according to the mother's account, she stayed in the cottage during her third visit to Dakshineshwar. According to M's diary, Shambhu transferred the property as a gift on the 11th of April, 1876, and died in 1877. After living in that cottage for a year, Holy Mother had a severe attack of dysentery. Shambhu took special care for her recovery, arranging for Dr. Prasad to treat her. When she recovered a little, she left for her native village of Jairambati, probably in September of 1875. Shortly after her arrival there, she had a severe relapse and was bedridden. Gradually, that disease worsened so much that her condition became critical. Holy Mother's father had passed away by then, so her mother and brothers served her the best that they could. We heard that when the master was told of her severe illness, he said to Hriday, "Well, Hriday, just think, if she should die now, her coming into this world would have been in vain. She would have failed to achieve the main purpose of human life, her destiny." So it's really beautiful to see. Um, this is an odd thing for me to talk, being because I'm on the beneficial end of this, what I'm about to say. But it's this is important for the Westerners to know and to understand the way that the monastery exists because of society, and that these are the reasons that they that the monastery food comes from the devotees. The well-being of the monks is because of they're being taken care of by the devotees, and their needs, and all of these things. Yes, the monastery, the monastic institution takes a large part of that, but even that monastic institution is because of you. It was built off of money donated by practitioners. And so this is the relationship between householders and the monastic path in life. That as a householder, the money that you make is first to take care of yourself, then take care of your family and provide for them. The next level of extra money that's around from that goes to the holy folks, goes to the monastery, goes to monasteries or swamis or wandering sadhus, or just people playing that role in your life. And then money that you make beyond that goes to the society for the welfare of the society. So it's one of the beautiful ideals in India that I really appreciated is that all householders understand their direct responsibility to the society at large to make the society what it should be. And I think for us in the West, what a wonderful ideal for us to learn from. That we see the health of our society around us to be our personal responsibility, not to get angry at the government because the government's not doing this, that, or the other, or the board of whatever decided this, that, and the other. If you see something that needs to be done, take responsibility and do it. Take care of it. And as a householder, that's your practice. That's where your enlightenment, which has no cause, will grow from. So this wonderful way of being, how important you are, to the monastics and to the centers, and to remember that, to know that the monks count on you. And I'm not. There's no way out of this awkward situation. I'll just endure it. But that was not a fundraising statement. that, that was not a request for money to be sent. It was also not a forbidding. We can visualize the mother during the second visit of her stay in Dakshineshwar. She was a young woman, 21 years old. Forgetting her abdominal pain and discomfort from dysentery, she continued her daily routine for a year. Wow. Wow. Over and above that, she endured verbal abuse from Hriday, who considered her to be his rival in caring for the master. She returned to Jairamati in September 1875, when she finally recovered her health to some extent. Now, I'm going to take this opportunity to, this is also something to pay attention to, that in this service to the monasteries, you also remember that to remember the nature of our service, that it's selfless service, and so it doesn't come with strings. You can't give money to the head Swami and then think that because of that you've got special access or special privilege or special treatment. Because that kind of thinking is what would lead to what Hriday was experiencing, where he became jealous of the others and their contributions. In this case, he was jealous of Holy Mother and saw her as a rival for taking care of the master. That's what ego does to us. So that's a good thing to remember, that in your service, if you feel that poke of ego, that poke of jealousy, that poke of competition, or that desire to be noticed or seen, learn from that. Feel how uncomfortable that feeling is when it first arises. Feel how much peace there is when you're doing your service. And then that thought comes in. This is why we practice awareness, because by that awareness, you will see that thought come in and you will feel its effect. and you will see why these things are considered to be evil. Because as that thought enters in, if you give root to it, the self, the inner peace is greatly disturbed by that, and the calmness of mind is extremely disturbed by that. And it's a way that we're directly blocked from the spirit, from the divine experience. And so don't let egoism do any of those things to you. Don't, be on the lookout, on the guard, in your awareness. Be watchful to see when these things enter the mind, because when they enter the mind, it's trivial to discount them, to let them go, to transcend them. But if they get into the mind and they link up with their other thoughts and their related memories, then it's much more difficult to weed these things out, and they will actually then begin to manifest trouble, manifest problems in your relationships with the others at the temple, or your relationships with the head Swami or the brother, or whoever it is that you were serving. So take this to heart. You can watch this and know it's a great way for learning how to serve, how to give, and really nurturing that selflessness, which is natural to us, which is inherent in our being. And it's only our wrong thinking about egoism, identity with egoism, that prevents our service from being as deeply satisfying as it's meant to be. Soon after her return, Holy Mother again was attacked by dysentery and became bedridden. The disease took such a serious turn that her life was in danger. When Ramakrishna heard of her illness, he was extremely concerned. Only one who has suffered from dysentery knows how horribly painful it is. Holy Mother, who had to answer the call of nature frequently, but there were no toilets in Jairambati, she had to go out into the bushes near the Kalu pond, close to her hut, and sometimes lie down near the ghat. She later described this period. I suffered from dysentery for a year. The body became a mere skeleton. I would go to answer the call of nature near the Kalu pond, but as I had to go there frequently, I would lay myself down near the pond. One day I saw my reflection in the water and noticed that all that remained of my body was only a few bones. I thought, dear me, what is the use of this body? Let me give it up. Let me leave it here. Seeing me in that condition, Nibby, a neighbor woman, said, my goodness, why are you lying down here? Come to your room. She then held me as I walked to my bed. Oh, what a terrible disease I had. It wouldn't leave me. When human effort fails, people take refuge in Providence. Holy Mother's suffering and struggle encourage us to fight against the diseases and difficulties in life, and her triumph over them gives us a ray of light in the midst of our darkness and hopelessness. This is one of the major roles and blessings of these great avatars that have come. This is a kernel in Christian thought also, that Jesus teaches us how to endure suffering, how to rely on the divine to make it through times that are way beyond our ability to handle, seemingly. That we find that when God says, I am your only refuge, we learn what that means, that there is nowhere else to turn that will help us make it through these times. We have to find the cave of the heart. We have to find the unchangeable absolute within, so that we have direct access, full direct access, and full protection, full refuge from the troubles of life, from the difficulties of living in this body. She described how her suffering came to an end by the grace of the Divine Mother. My body then was swollen all over. My nose, eyes, and ears, they were running profusely. My brother Umesh said, "Sister, will you take a vow to fast in front of the village goddess, Simhavahini?" I agreed, and he supported me as I walked to the temple. The full moon was then a new moon to me, as my sight was blurred from the continuous discharge of fluid. Over and above this, my dysentery continued. I lay down in front of the temple and then crawled nearby to answer the call of nature. That night, my godmother, who lived nearby, grunted loudly from time to time so that I may not be frightened. Soon, Mother Simhavahini appeared to my mother in the form of a blacksmith girl of Radu's age, 12 or 13, and said, "Go and bring your daughter back. She is so ill that she should not be left alone. Bring her back right now. Give her this medicine and she will be cured." She also told me, "Make juice by crushing a squash flower and mixing it with a little salt. Apply this to your eyes and they will clear up." I then took the medicine that my mother had received and applied the squash flower juice to my eyes. This almost immediately cleared the mucus from my eyes, and they began to stop watering. My normal vision came back that same day. Gradually, the swelling of my body disappeared and I recovered. I told people about the medicine I had received from Mother Simhavahini. And this temple is still there in Jairambati, and you can go there and get some of the same dust or mud that she took that cured her. And so when I went in 2000, back in 2000, when I went there for the first time, I got me a little box, a small box of that dust. From that time on, the power of the goddess became known far and near, and people in large numbers began to visit her. I received medicine, and the world was also blessed. Mother Simhavahini is a living goddess. I keep some earth from that temple ground in a container. I eat a little of that earth every day and give some to Radhu to take also. So this is where we will leave it for this week. So we got some nice insights into Holy Mother there. Let me turn off the recording.